Hi guys, good morning, welcome back to the channel. So today we have a pretty cool car on review, and that is the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS, which is this very beautiful car that you see behind me. For today's review, we're gonna go check out its exterior. It's a really good looking car. Check out its interior. I think most of you are not very familiar with the Skoda range of electric cars at the moment. And then of course we're gonna go take the car for a drive and see how it stacks up against some more premium competition in its price point. But before we do all that, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're looking to renew your car insurance for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below. We've got some very good offers for you. It's free to inquire, so check that out if you require an insurance renewal quote. Without any further ado, let's go. Alright guys, so jumping straight into it, this is the exterior of the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS, and this is all electric, and this is the RS version. So this has a larger power output than the regular Skoda Enyaq, and of course this particular body style comes in the non-RS version as well, so you can check that out if you're interested in something that's a little bit less powerful. But for today's review, let's just focus on this car because it's absolutely a very good looking car. I think it could be one of the best looking cars that we have reviewed on the channel this year. And of course the year is coming to an end, and we've got still got some pretty exciting cars coming up, but I think if you're in the market for a new EV, this could be one of the better looking ones at the moment. I really love the colorway as well. This is like, I don't really know what this color is called, but it's got this copper coffee-ish finish, and I must say it really stands out in the car park. Like from a large distance away, you can already spot the car. But in any way, in any case, this is the front of the car. So pretty angular, pretty handsome looking. So one of the signature features of this Skoda Enyaq is actually the crystal grille, which is actually lighted. So it's got a very prominent design, especially when you're driving along at night. I'm not so sure if I'm a huge fan of the crystal grille. I know it's supposed to be the signature piece, but I do feel like if the car had a more regular blanked out front, it would look a little bit more premium actually. And this car sits at about $260,000 in terms of its price point at the moment. So it does come up against a little bit more premium competition from the mainstream continental brands like BMW. So I think looking premium in this segment is probably quite important. Now, I'm gonna go around the car and show you a little bit more about how the car looks. Pardon me because the car is a little bit dirty. I've been driving it around and it's been raining the last couple of days as well. So in terms of the wheel size, these are 21-inch wheels as standard, and these have these sort of like the aero covers on it as well. So I'm thinking that these are removable, but I'm not entirely sure. They look quite good though. I mean, they have this pretty sleek profile to it, and I think when it comes to EVs these days, this is kind of the styling convention that they're going for, a little bit more of an aerodynamic look. So from far, if you look at it, it's already quite obvious that this is an EV. Now if you go down the side profile, then this is kind of where the magic happens, because this coupe version of the Skoda Enyaq does have a sloping roof line. A little bit more aggressive look to the traditional SUV styling, which I think I'm all for. And if I go down the back, you'll see what I mean by this is a good looking car. So really nice angles all around. And I think at the rear, this has got some real styling finesse to it. Interestingly though, at the rear of the car, there isn't any RS badging. You only get RS badging at the sort of the side fenders of the car. Not sure why it isn't on the rear, but no matter, still a very good looking car. Now I'm gonna go open the boot for you to check out the boot space. Let's see. So right now I've got my golf bag inside. I have had to remove the driver, the golf driver, just so it can fit comfortably. So you would be able to fit maybe 2 bags in this car with the drivers removed, which is not a huge problem. You just need to kind of like take the driver out, and then of course you can squeeze in 2 bags upright. So pretty cool. And of course if you're not a golfer like myself, then you wouldn't really have to worry about too much about golf bags fitting in the car. It's got a pretty sizable boot space as well. So let's jump inside the car and check out the interior styling of the Skoda Enyaq. Alright, so welcome to the cabin of the Skoda Enyaq, and this is pretty much the same interior as you would get on the regular Enyaq SUV, and this is of course the Coupe RS version, but pretty much the same interior. You do get different seats if I'm not mistaken, which is you can see the sport seats over here. In terms of design wise, I would say that if you compare this to its most closely related car, which is of course the Volkswagen range, the ID4, ID5 and the GTX, you do get quite a different vibe in the car. So this has a more traditional styling in terms of the way the dashboard is formed, the way the aircon vents are placed, the way gear selectors are placed. These are all a little bit more traditional compared to the ID range of cars from Volkswagen. But no matter, I think it's still a very good looking interior, and I think if you think about Skodas from many years ago, you do really feel like there's been a advancement in the way that they've styled the interiors. So they used to be a little bit more utilitarian, but now you do get quite a lot of premium touches around. This particular one doesn't have that super nice soft touch that you get on the very first Skoda Enyaq that we test drove on the channel. But this is actually kind of nice. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of those sustainable material interiors as well. I mean, I think they serve a purpose when it comes to the narrative of an EV, but in terms of whether or not they're the nicest, I think regular leather is fine as well. But in terms of what is fitted out in the car, so you've got an infotainment touchscreen unit, and this is of course this is large and clear. However, this probably isn't the most easy to use system on the market at the moment. There are quite a lot of fiddly bits with the infotainment unit, and I'll share some of the quirks about this car in a bit as well. But to get things started, so when you get into the car, there isn't actually an on-off switch. There is no start-stop button, so you just need to step on the accelerator, or sorry, step on the brakes, and then the car comes alive, provided you have the key with you inside the car. So what I've done is I've actually stepped on the brakes, and then the car has come alive. So if I bring the car into a drive mode, you're actually sort of ready to go. And then of course the electronic handbrake automatically disengages and engages as well. So when you're done with driving, so let's say I'm moving forward a little bit right now, and I'm done, all I need to do is just pull up the handbrake, and the car goes into park on its own. So all that is actually pretty convenient. You don't really need to do much. Now the downside is, if you take your foot off the pedal, the car kind of just shuts off automatically as well. So in terms of yeah, this is probably not the kind of car you can leave you can just sort of get out of, go and collect your chicken rice from the nearby store and then come back in. Of course, you can start the air conditioning to keep the car running for your other occupants, but generally speaking, it's like, for example, like just now when I was shooting the interior, I just couldn't keep the lights on because or rather maybe I don't know how to, but it was difficult to find a configuration where I could leave the lights on and then get out of the car and show you what the exterior lights look like. It's just one of those cars that are extra sensitive to this whole thing. The other thing that's a little bit strange about this car is that every time I get into this car, I kind of feel like my driving position is off in terms of the seat position, and then what happens is that I go and press the preset number 1 button, which is of course what I've preset my driving position to, and sometimes it will actually move forward, which means it hasn't been in the original driving position. And other times, like right now, I actually feel like I'm still quite far from the steering wheel, and then I adjust myself and I feel like there's this possibility that the car actually hasn't gone back to the original driving position that I left it in. I can't verify this, of course, no tangible way to verify this, but it does feel a little bit like that. The other thing that is probably a little bit quirky about the car is that you still need to run wired CarPlay and wired Android Auto, which is honestly, I think in this day and age, is a little bit unacceptable. I would expect wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto in a car like that. And of course, this infotainment unit is also kind of made to be used with Apple CarPlay, because the infotainment unit on itself is actually quite bare. It's just a piece of hardware with some basic menu controls. And it is kind of made to run Apple CarPlay so that you get your full suite of music in terms of Spotify and navigation through your Apple Maps or Google Maps, whichever one you prefer. But in typical Skoda sensibility, you do get some interesting features in the car that help you to navigate or to like make your life a little bit easier. And one of those things is a dedicated climate control button, which I think is quite rare these days. So you press on it and then it goes into a climate control menu. Now, every time I start the car, especially after a slightly extended period of parking the car, the air recirculation will actually turn off. So you need to turn it on most times that you get into the car. The other thing which I can't quite figure out is that the passenger side always goes into eco mode when I start the car. I think this is possibly due to the fact that there isn't actually a passenger in the passenger seat. So I'm not sure whether or not if you put somebody here, see if I can activate it. Oh yeah, actually it's true. So once I put some weight down on the seat, the car senses that there is a passenger in the passenger seat, and then it will actually turn on, or not turn on, but bring the passenger aircon settings back into play. So otherwise, if you're driving along on your own, the passenger side air condition is actually running on an eco mode. So it's only like a half strength thing, and it doesn't really give you the full aircon supply that you would require. Now, I think that's all well and good, but especially in a place like Singapore where weather is pretty hot, you want your air conditioning to run full strength, because it's not just about the passenger side, the rest of the car kind of feels hot as well, and that kind of affects you as well as the driver. So I think once again, this is probably one of those like efficiency oriented functions where they try to maximize efficiency. But I think in Singapore's context, I don't think we're at the level yet where we are extremely conscious about all this. I would rather just have my aircon at full blast, or rather functioning properly, even if I'm the only driver or the only person in the car. Other good things about the car, let me see. I like the fact that it has an auto hold button that is actually dedicated, more or less. So it's on the top of the infotainment unit here. You've got some shortcuts. So through these shortcuts, you can access your car menus, you can access your parking camera, you can access your charging menu of sorts. You can turn on and off your lane keep assist, and most importantly, you can turn off your auto hold, which generally I like to drive without auto hold because I do like the creep function, and I think this is especially true when you are reverse parking, because you're only operating your brakes and not your accelerator. So you don't want the car to hold in place every time you bring the car to a complete stop. You want to be able to let the car creep off the moment you release your foot from the brake. So yes, quite a lot of details that I've gone through in this interior, and I think that's also because the Skoda range of EVs is a fairly new range of cars that we've seen on the channel. You know, unlike some of the other brands where we have reviewed a multitude of different models and most of the interiors feel the same, this particular one is new to us as well. I do like this very sleek driver's display that is sort of embedded within the dashboard. So I think this is just the right amount of information given to me, and it looks very good as well. The other thing that I would really like to talk about is, of course, the steering wheel. So generally speaking, I think the Skoda steering wheels feel great. I think they're quite nice to hold. They're not too thick, a bit Porsche-esque. You know, like BMW likes to make their steering wheels very thick, and Porsche likes to make them a little bit thinner. This one is on the thinner side, but feels really good, really well made. Feels quite premium to the touch, but I would have preferred, this is after all a brand new EV from Skoda, and of course this is a car that's going to kind of take the brand forward into the coming years. I would have preferred to see a steering wheel that was dedicated to this car, or at least a newer steering wheel, and not something that you know, has been around since maybe what, 2020 or 2018, I'm not sure. But this basically looks like every other Skoda steering wheel that you've seen from the petrol powered versions in the past. So this is probably one bit of the car that I feel like you could probably have put a new steering wheel and really made a statement with the new interior. And you know, it's not a difficult piece to change out, it's just one piece, but it really does make a huge impact in terms of how elevated and how premium the car can possibly feel inside. So that's just my 2 cents worth. You know, feel free to disagree if you think that this is the perfect steering wheel for the car. But generally speaking, you know, even though I have my little complaints about the car here and there in terms of the interior, I think it's a very nice place to be in. I think it's been quite a pleasant car to drive around, to be very fair. And aside from these little quirks that after you get used to it, I think this is generally you won't have much complaints about the car. In terms of build quality is also pretty decent. I mean, probably not as well put together as say a Volkswagen ID4 or ID5 GTX, but it's pretty much up there in that same ballpark. So really no complaints about that. Let's jump into the back of the car and check out the rear passenger seating, because this is after all a sort of like a family size SUV. Granted, the styling is not so family friendly per se, because if you were in the market for a family friendly SUV, you will probably just get the regular Skoda Enyaq without the coupe version and without the RS. But nonetheless, I think people who want a little bit more a better looking car, they might still consider this. So let's check out the rear and see how the car performs. Let's go. Alright, so welcome to the rear of the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS, and the first thing that I'm greeted with is this very nice full-size panoramic roof. So this is not a sunroof, you can't open it up. It's just a panoramic roof for you to look out of, and it is pretty cool. I mean, right now it's pretty hot outside, but in terms of the way the glass panel has been insulated, I don't really feel like any sunlight is permeating into the cabin. I mean, in terms of light, yes, but not in terms of the heat. Yeah, it's also not very hot to the touch, so I think that's a pretty good thing. Going or zeroing in on space, this driver's seat is actually in its comfort access setting, so it's actually been moved back to allow me to get out of the car. So in reality, this seat will be maybe 2 to 3 inches forward, and that will actually allow me quite a lot more legroom than you see right now. But even in this setting, I think this is pretty good. If you compare this to last week's review, where we reviewed the iX2, which is also a sportback SUV, that's probably in the same ballpark pricing. That's probably about 20 grand more expensive than this car. That had quite a lot less space than what you get in the Enyaq RS, and a lot less headroom as well. One of the things that I'm always very fascinated with is that I think Skoda, Volkswagen, they've all been very sensible in the way they've applied the sportback styling. And again, in this car, what you get is a sloping roofline. Exterior wise, you know, when you look at the car, you get a sloping roofline, but interior wise, your headroom isn't really affected. So I still got ample amounts of headroom, so that's really good. In terms of the floor, this is sort of like a flat floor. So in terms of carrying 3 passengers, I think you'll be fine. However, this isn't a particularly broad car, so I think the middle passenger will have to be quite small. And also, there are these little cushion edges that are meant to provide additional thigh support for the right and left passenger. But that also means that the middle passenger will have to contend with these things poking into the side of their thighs. Unless, of course, they're very slim or they're very small, they won't have any problems with that. But I would say this is still a car that's best suited to carrying 4 people in its normal configuration. Now, one of the things I do like about this car that makes it quite family friendly is the fact that it has built-in blinds in the rear doors, which I think is such an important feature if you're carrying younger children, like toddlers, because they do tend to fall asleep in the car. And we do have a lot of tunnels in Singapore, so we drive from like ground level into a tunnel and then out again. So what happens is that if you don't have these blinds, your kid's gonna fall asleep in the tunnel, and then when you drive out, they're gonna be blinded by the sun, and then they're gonna wake up a little bit cranky and a little bit cryy. And that's not something that any parent would want. So personally, if I have the option of built-in blinds, I'm always going to be very happy that the built-in blinds are a feature that has been provided to me. Alright, so that's all about the rear. I mean, you got ISOFIX points, legroom is pretty good, so even if you put in like a rearward facing child seat, a full capsule, you probably won't have to affect the front passenger too much in terms of legroom. So I think it is quite family friendly, or rather it is quite suitable for carrying a young family. Now, earlier on I mentioned its comparisons to the iX2, and I think that's a car that like I really want to talk about as well in terms of its comparison to the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS, because obviously in terms of power bracket, they're not in the same bracket whatsoever. In fact, they are 0 to 100, they are like 5 seconds apart. But in terms of price point, they sit in a very similar price bracket. So let's jump back into the driver's seat. I'll take the car for a drive, tell you a little bit more about how I feel, and then at the same time also make some comparisons to a car I feel is very worth comparing it to. Right, let's go. Okay, so welcome back to the driver's seat of the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS. And just to get some specs out of the way before we go for a drive. Okay, so basically this car houses an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the same as you get in the regular non-RS version. However, this car's electric motors has been spec'd for more power. So this has dual electric motors, and this is good for 389 brake horsepower, 545 Newton meters of torque, and this car will go from 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds. Now, interestingly, the regular non-RS version of the car has the same battery pack, less power output of course, but essentially only 30 kilometers extra of range. So it's either the regular version is a little bit inefficient, or this particular RS version is actually quite efficient. And I'm going to say that this is actually pretty efficient, because currently now I'm at 25% charge, which is 25% left, which is quite little, and I still got 142 kilometers of range. And truth be told, I've actually been juicing this car quite a little bit as well, and still I'm getting quite a good amount of you know, I expected to have a lot less range on this car left, considering the amount I've been driving the car, and also the amount of times that I've kind of juiced the accelerator. But generally speaking, I think this has got, you know, when Skoda says that on paper it has more than like 550 kilometers of range, like 547 kilometers of range, something along that lines. And then now I compare it to the 25%, 142 kilometers of range. It does seem to add up quite a little bit, you know. So I would say that on a full charge, realistically around town, or you know, in Singapore's setting, I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect about 500 kilometers from the car, thereabout. Yeah. So in terms of range, that's actually pretty impressive. But enough about range, because range is not the most interesting topic in the world. Let's talk about how the car drives, because the moment you get into the car, and right now I'm kind of maneuvering around a car park at car park speeds, the first thing you immediately notice is how the steering feel is on the heavier side. And I don't know about you, but I personally think that this is a very, very, very pleasant trait in the car. It's like, I think the moment I got into the car, when I picked it up for the test, I think within the first 10 seconds, I told myself this is going to be a good review in terms of the way the car drives. And you know, it just, I don't know, man, but I feel like cars today, modern cars today, they're just spec'd for, like, the steering weights are just so light, and I don't think that's extremely pleasant, or that's pleasant in any way. I do enjoy a slightly heavier steering feel, and that's exactly what you get in the Enyaq Coupe RS. It just feels a lot more reassured around higher speeds as well. So if you're driving up on the expressway, say you take the car up to Malaysia, and you're doing about maybe 150 to 160 kilometers per hour, you don't really want the car to feel so twitchy in terms of the light steering wheel. And of course, you know, most cars today come with a sort of adaptive setting to the steering wheel where the wheel gets heavier when you go to higher speeds, which is good. But in the Enyaq RS or Coupe RS, it's already heavy to begin with. So even at higher speeds, it gets even heavier, which I think is a super pleasant trait to have in a car. Another thing that I found actually interestingly is that although this car is so closely related to, you know, the Volkswagen range of electric SUVs, so your ID4, your ID5, and in this particular power setting, then it will be more equivalent to the GTX versions of the car. For some odd reason, despite a very similar setup in terms of wheel size as well, the Enyaq Coupe RS is actually a lot more comfortable. I'm not sure what it is, but it is just a lot more comfortable. So, aside from its power that it offers, I think people who prioritize comfort, interestingly now also have a choice, because I think the Enyaq Coupe RS does quite adequately blend in the whole comfort element of the car along with the power that you get from the car. Because I think a lot of times when the car becomes a bit more powerful, manufacturers tend to stiffen up the suspension just so they can cope with any sort of lunging or any sort of body roll when it comes to the corners. But in the coupe and in the Skoda Enyaq, you don't really have this problem because you get the best of both worlds. And overall, I think in terms of EVs that we've tested this year, I think the overall driving package of the Enyaq Coupe RS does really punch above its weight. Which actually brings me on to another point, because this car sits in a price bracket of around $260,000 with COE. So I know for those of you who are overseas and watching this review, you will be wondering why cars in Singapore are so expensive. But in any case, this is $260,000 in Singapore now. In the same price segment, what you can get is a iX1, or for a little bit more money, you can get iX2. But for conversation's sake, because this is a sort of like a sportback SUV, I'm going to compare it against the iX2, just so we've got a little bit more of a similar comparison in terms of the body styling and what you get out of it. So with the iX2, obviously you've got a more tuned down power train, so that sits within category A COE. And of course you get premium badging, you get premium materials, you get BMW styling, but you don't have a lot of power. And I think the iX2 is one of those cars that have kind of gone with a much stiffer suspension, because that particular car comes with an M Sport suspension, and that is really nowhere near as comfortable as what you get in the Enyaq Coupe RS. And then you also consider the fact that for less money, or less upfront costs, you also get a car that's way more powerful. So you're talking about 5.5 seconds versus 10.5 seconds. So that's a huge difference. It's like double, it's like almost double the quickness of the iX2. So I think that's, in that sense, if you view it in that sort of comparison, then you've got quite a lot of value for money in the Enyaq Coupe RS as well. So really, I think it's it all comes down to the buyer and what their priorities are. So if you just want a fairly luxurious electric SUV, Continental, and you don't really care about power, you want a good amount of comfort, I think the iX1 in the regular suspension setting is probably a really good option, probably around the same price as the Enyaq Coupe RS. Then again, you can also consider the non-RS version of the Enyaq Coupe. So quite a lot of things to think about, right? If you're a car buyer in Singapore, you want to spend $260,000 and you're kind of choosing a car in this price bracket. Really quite a lot of things to think about. But obviously if you want value for money in terms of power, in terms of space, I think you got a little bit more space here as well, then I think the Enyaq Coupe RS is a really great option to look at if you're not too fussed about the branding that you get from more premium mass market brand like BMW. But you know, to end off the review, I just want to say that to summarize it all, obviously the Enyaq Coupe RS is not a perfect car. There are a little bits of quirks in the way its hardware and its software kind of operates, but if you think about the overall package, and being an auto journalist, we tend to think about the driving aspect of the car a little bit more than, you know, the other little bits and pieces of the car. I would say that this is such a well-rounded car. It's so well-rounded. Like, I could drive this anywhere, anytime. I would be super happy driving this car. And I mean, it's got so much power as well. Like right now, I'm at 85 kilometers per hour. I'm just gonna juice it a little bit. It's a bit crowded. And just like that, I'm up to 120. Just for a moment, yeah. Don't flame me for speeding. I'm just trying to show you how fast the car can go. And it's just so effortless. And while doing that, I'm not crashing over road imperfections. It's like, it's super comfortable as well. And so you've got comfort, you've got power, you've got a comparatively reasonable price point compared to premium competitors. It does really have a lot going for it. Unfortunately, in Singapore, the reality is that consumers are very brand conscious. So, you know, it remains to be seen whether or not this particular car will receive the attention that I think it deserves. Obviously, in this current juncture, you do see a lot more iX1s and iX2s on the road, but hopefully in future, you'll see a lot more of these cars on the road. In fact, I'm really thinking as well, you know, perhaps I'm gonna hunt down maybe like a used unit in a couple of years, you know, see how these cars hold up in a couple of years in terms of its interior quality. But generally speaking, I think this has been a very satisfying drive for me. Now, okay, enough about all that. I feel like I'm kind of droning on and on. If you have enjoyed this review or found it useful in any way, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel, because we've got more reviews coming out every single week, and it would be wonderful if you could join us for those reviews. We are now halfway through our goal in reaching 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so we would really appreciate your help to allow us to reach that goal as well. And you know, after we reach the 2,000 mark, 2,000 followers mark or subscriber mark, we will definitely be going for much more as well, because there's a never-ending supply of cars to review. So we definitely hope to have your support for all those future reviews as well. If you have questions about the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS that you know, for some reason I failed to address, please put your questions in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions as well. And once again, before we go, if you are a driver in Singapore and you need an insurance renewal quote because it's that time of the year, click on the link in the description box below. We've got some very competitive quotes for you, some of the best in the market. In fact, I think most of the time, maybe 8 out of 10 times, when somebody requests a quote from us, we are able to provide them a better quote than what they already have. So it's free to inquire anyway. So even if you already have an insurance renewal quote, don't be shy. Just come and fill up the form, get a quote from us, no obligations. If you are cheaper, purchase it from us. If not, so be it. We are pretty confident that we will be able to match that price. And if not, as usual, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.